It is the year 1995, and the marriage ritual of Dave and Clarice is at its end. The priest's speech sets a firm and interesting basis for their relationship. As he points out, their life together should represent a tie made out of 3 chords. The first 2 chords are the two of them, and the third one is God. This is the kind of marriage that can endure any obstacle. Dave and Clarice sit in their car and drive away towards their new life, full of possibilities, fame, wealth, and happiness. Clarice is aiming to become a successful real estate broker, while Dave is planning on entering the Hall of Fame of baseball. Life gives their story a different kind of second chapter. However, after his injury, Dave starts working as a builder and remodeler. His business is going slow, while Clarice's career seems to be booming. Her compassion is mostly what keeps their lives going. But what's much more important in their relationship is the growing distance and lack of affection. They find it extremely hard to negotiate and spend some quality time together. One afternoon, Dave goes on to play some basketball with his friends Tree and Brock. Both are going through important transition moments in their lives. Tree's wife is pregnant, and Brock is recently going through a divorce. Perhaps this is the reason why he picks a fight during the game in the next scene. The man on the other side of the front line is Darnell, an individual who came out of prison 15 years ago. Seeing him punch his friend, Dave interferes and engages in a lengthy back and forth with him. His sense of masculinity, which gets beat up at home, has some space to spread its wings during the basketball games. In the next scene, as Clarice tries to sell an extremely important project, he hits a gym with Brock and Tree. In a comical picture of his relationship, Tree sees Brock moving away after seeing some girls. Her name is Julie, and as Brock knows, she is single. Now it is understandable why he is getting a divorce. He has never been a faithful husband. Getting a close-up on Julie's life, we see that she has a son named Bryson. The young man seems to be quite a successful swimmer, and his mother is truly excited to see him perform in the upcoming Junior Olympics. That night, after drinking a few beers with his boys, Dave comes home and looks to become intimate with Clarice. This is when we most clearly see that the fires of their relationship are completely set out. Clarice thinks that her husband is only doing this to catch up with Tree, but she doesn't want to have a child right now. To her, the most important thing is her career, and she expects the same attitude from Dave as well. In the next scene, Dave, Tree, and Brock are at a baseball pitch. They seem to have their own junior club, training the kids. Suddenly, the situation demands a disciplining action from Dave. One of the kids, named Darius, starts showing violent and racist tendencies, and David gives him and others a heartfelt lecture about what humanity is. Soon, we'll learn what's behind Darius's violent behavior. His father is none other than Darnell, and he harms his kid even in front of his friends and coaches. That day, Dave gets carried away. He loses track of time and forgets to be at home at 5 to take Clarice to a very important award ceremony. This ceremony means the world to him, so there is no wonder why she is so enraged when her husband comes home late. While driving, she keeps scolding him for being so insensitive and selfish, and for spending so much time with the boys, and gradually, Dave starts fighting back. It is when the car starts overflowing with screaming that suddenly another car hits their passenger seat. The accident is serious, but thankfully, Dave is all right. The same cannot be said about Clarice in this moment. However, she is unconscious. Dave tries to help the medics in the next scene, but he is sent away to get some medical attention as well. Once his minor injuries are taken care of, he is told that Clarice's injuries are no longer life-threatening. However, if she doesn't want to be handicapped for the rest of her life, she will have to undergo months of physical therapy. Dave sees Brock and Tree then, and as he receives a hilarious present from Tree, he sees his mother-in-law trampling towards him. Her name is Mary, and she seems to be impelled to blame Dave for everything. The man listens to her with patience and endures her scolding. When Clarice is finally written off from the hospital, he takes it as his task to take care of her and take over the entire house. Courageously, he endeavors to shift gears and become a stronger, more house-oriented man. But Clarice doesn't seem to see that at all. Drawn to herself and depressed, she stares at one point in space as Dave tries to get her in the house. Suddenly, the expressions on their faces are swapped. Dave's hopefulness is changed by the gloom, and Clarice's face lights up. Mary is standing at the door, saying that she has moved in. From her point of view, Dave cannot be trusted with serious responsibilities, and unfortunately, Clarice doesn't argue back when she expresses them so openly. That night, while drinking at a bar, Dave shares this news with Brock and Tree. Right away, the possible solutions start emerging in the conversation, of which Brock's seems to be the best one. From his point of view, in order to send Mary away, It is most important to excel at the healing process for Clarice as soon as possible. The woman he had his eyes on that day, Julie, seems to be one of the most renowned physical therapists in the city. Dave should call her up and see if she makes house calls as well. As the conversation about marriages continues, Tree's alcohol poisoning takes over his mind, and suddenly he starts sobering up. It is comical to see what his perspective on relationships is. Love for him is something that has an incredible gravitating power, so even if he wants to get away, he is forever doomed to be defeated. When Clarice is visited by Julie in the next scene, she is as desperate and cynical as ever. With effortful hostility and anger, she tries to reject treatment, but even her mother urges her to stop acting this way. Clarice's anger switches to sorrow then. Being stuck in the house, she feels as if she has lost everything. Soon, however, her attitude changes as she realizes that she needs to work with Julie to regain her life. Her situation gradually improves. As she and Julie start to become good friends, Clarice takes her first steps, and after a few weeks, she manages to walk on her own. After one of her concluding sessions, Julie's car fails to start. Right in this moment, Dave comes out of the house, holding a basketball, clearly planning to play with his boys. He is not happy when Mary and Clarice tell Julie that he will take her to his son's competition, but he has no choice. While driving, he reveals to Julie that his friend has been looking to ask her out on a date. He shares Brock's situation as well, so Julie's excitement quickly goes away. She doesn't want to get involved with anyone who is going through a divorce. She doesn't want to be someone's rebound relationship. Their relationship is filled with mutual respect, so Dave doesn't regret missing a basketball game at all. Bryce shows the same respect towards him as well. While taking them home, Dave asks him if he likes baseball. As it turns out, the young man loves it, but he has never had a chance to start training. Naturally, Dave offers him to join his team anytime he wants, and the kid is delighted in the face of this opportunity. For the first time in his life, Dave feels proud of what he does for a living. In the next scene, in front of their church, he gets praised by none other than Mary as well. Following that day, both Clarice and Dave appear at a very important dinner with her clients in a fancy restaurant. When a waiter comes up to them and asks who will be taking the check, everybody starts raising their voices, trying to be the one to do the honors. Unfortunately for Dave, Clarice joins this small commotion as well, and embarrassingly for her husband, she comes out as a victor. She looks over at Dave then, indicating to him to get his credit card and pay. The expression on his face makes it obvious that his credit card is over the limit. To postpone the embarrassment, he still takes his card and hands it to the waitress, but the shame is inevitable. Before the waiter comes back to the table with terrible news, Clarice lies about his career. She paints a picture in which her husband owns a very large construction company, and once Dave tries to tell the truth, she starts whispering to him angrily. As arguing starts, the table starts becoming tense, but everyone becomes quiet once the waiter says that the card he's been given was declined. Clarice's client takes care of the bill then, and the subject of conversation quickly changes to release the tension. Clarice is extremely humiliated. Naturally, the couple have a big fight at home. Clarice is extremely angry at him for embarrassing her like that, while Dave blames her for lying about his career. To him, they have no money because Clarice is trying to live a wealthy, glamorous life, when, in fact, they cannot handle that kind of lifestyle. Clarice, on the other hand, cannot stand her husband's way of living. One of their voices can be heard throughout the entire neighborhood. Mary intervenes and takes her daughter's side as well. All Dave wants is to be accepted, but he finds himself rejected by his family. Feeling cornered and defeated, he goes down to the basement and tries to soothe his rage there. The next morning, after arriving at the baseball pitch, Dave and Brock notice a glimpse of Julie and her son. Dave didn't think she would show up. He's happy to see them. As the team of young boys talks Bryce down during his first practice, Dave encourages him until the young man hits his first ball. He seems to be good at the job that he loves. After the practice, Julie turns down Brock's offer to grab a coffee. She rejects him clearly and politely before driving away. That night, Dave visits Darnell. The latter is obviously trying to keep his son away from baseball, and as Dave sees it, Darius will end up just like his father if this continues. This is why he tells the man to give his son an opportunity. Their communication is filled with an underlying resentment. The two seem to have been rivals throughout their whole lives. When Dave comes home to his wife and her mother, he receives a call from Bryce and goes outside to answer. The young man is inviting him over to the pool to show him how he swims. Dave is happy to hear about the offer, but he doesn't know that Mary is watching him closely from inside the house. The mother-in-law sees that something is wrong, and she puts a seed of mistrust in Clarice's mind. That night, the latter tries to address it in the basement. She can feel her husband moving away from her, and she shares how scared she is to lose him. Dave shows no intention to participate in this conversation, but he agrees to see a bishop who can help them solve this relationship crisis. In the next scene, Clarice shares her struggles with the bishop. She feels as if her husband is punishing her for something. She feels abandoned, as Dave spends most of his time outside with his team and with his boys, instead of being at home and working on his relationship. Dave, on the other hand, feels as if he is just visiting his marriage. He doesn't feel respected and heard. He has no say in anything, and he is just there to serve. The matter of having a baby is also brought into the conversation. The bishop thinks that David spends so much time with those kids because he lacks that kind of relationship at home. When he hears about Clarice's take on this, he turns to reminding them about the day he got them married. The three-stranded cord is still wrapped around their shoulders, and it's their choice to either leave it on or take it off. That night, an unusual dream comes to Dave. It slips into his consciousness abruptly and disturbs his sleep immediately. In the dream, he is massaged by Julie, who passionately brushes her fingers across his back. Dave jumps up in bed immediately. When he gets up to have a glass of water, Clarice feels an urge to check his phone. In the call history, she notices the name of Julie Sawyer, and enraged, she turns over in the bed. The crisis in their relationship is just getting worse. Clarice and her co-worker Michelle seal an enormous deal in the next scene. Michelle is Clarice's good friend, so she is quick to notice the gloom on her face. When she hears that Dave is having an affair, she immediately feels an urge to rush away and snatch Julie by the hair. Trying to encourage her friend, she tells her that her relationship can still be saved, but Clarice isn't so sure that she can find it in her to forgive Dave. Meanwhile, the convicted cheater is attending Bryce's competition. He cheers for him wholeheartedly. After his victory, the young man is taken to a rep from the Junior Olympics. Before he comes back, Dave and Julie are left alone. In the park in front of the pool, she gives him praise he so lacks around the house. She says that once during their regular sessions, she told Clarice that men like Dave are hard to find. Here, Dave is asked about his baseball career as well, seeing that Julie appreciates what he does and sees something honorable in it, means the world to him. Suddenly, Brock comes up to them from behind, holding flowers, so the conversation is interrupted. Julie walks away as quickly as possible. Once the two men are left alone, Brock decides to address whatever is going on between Dave and Julie, but the conversation is quickly cut short. Dave has no intention to talk about it. That night, Clarice lights up candles and tries to revive the heat in her relationship, but Dave fails to find it in himself to feel even a glimpse of passion. This is when his wife finally decides to address the issue of Julie. She thinks that his husband's relationship with her is sexual, but sadly for her, Dave reveals something even worse. After a few seconds of silence, he chooses to be completely honest with her and says that he has feelings towards Julie. He says nothing more and walks away before any kind of helpful conversation can take place. Clarice is lost and hurt. Knowing how to take this information and save her relationship, she visits Julie the next morning and screams at her to stay away from Dave. Julie tries to assure her that she and her husband are just friends, but there is no use. Clarice is scared, and she will do anything not to lose Dave. Later that afternoon, Bryce takes part in yet another competition, while Dave plays basketball against Darnell. Afterwards, the two rivals have their first honest conversation. For the first time, they seem to respect each other. When Dave returns home, he is met with an unexpected scene. Mary is piling his things in the front yard of the house. As she screams at him and scolds him for being a lesser man, Clarice just stands there and says nothing. Seeing his wife act this passively while her marriage is destroyed by her mother, Dave decides bitterly to quit this relationship. This is exactly when Brock's car drives by. The man rushes out quickly and brings terrible news. As it turns out, Bryce had an accident during the competition. He went into the wall too hard, and he's been rushed to the hospital. Shooting one last glare at his wife and mother-in-law, Dave walks away. He doesn't see how Clarice tries to follow him. Unfortunately, he will never know, since Mary stops her daughter immediately. She seems to have too much power over her daughter. Dave sees a terrible scene upon arriving at the hospital. Unfortunately, Bryce doesn't make it. The medics are noting down the time of his passing as Julie mourns her son. Clarice attends the funeral service too, in the next scene. Once the church is emptied, she is left alone with the bishop. The man of God underlines a very important detail in his monologue that comes. He says that Clarice has let her mother change the course of her marriage. Mary has been the third cord in her relationship, instead of God, and thanks to that, She is finding herself in this kind of situation right now. Still, the bishop thinks that she is in the right place at the right time. As thoughts of the end fill up the entirety of Dave's mind, he moves into a separate apartment. Meanwhile, Clarice has a conversation with her mother, in which she understands something very important. Suddenly, it dawns on her that Mary has been looking at her daughter's relationship according to her experience. She has always hated Clarice's father, who got so bitter that he hit her one day. Thanks to that, now she is seeing her husband in every man, even in Dave. And this is the reason she's been so eager to put him out of this house. Clarice realizes that she shouldn't have listened to her biased mother. Drawn by her directives, Clarice has never properly learned how to truly love and care for somebody. And this is the reason why Dave slowly moved away from her. As their conversation ends in a warm tone, Clarice says that it is time for her to grow up. With respect, she asks Mary to leave her house. At this point in the story, our attention is briefly taken away from the main conflict. The next morning, upon arriving in his apartment, Dave sees Tree sitting on the edge of his bed, watching a show that Clarice's mother loves to watch. Dave immediately understands that his friend has been kicked out of his house, but he doesn't know the reason yet. As Tree says with a cracked-up voice, his wife thinks that he's too emotional, too much in touch with his feminine side. Dave, who has enough problems of his own, urges his best friend to stop whining and get back to his wife. Tree doesn't fight back too rigorously. When the night falls, Dave receives a call from Julie. As it turns out, she is finally ready to accept help from a friend. Soon, Dave finds out that the woman is blaming herself for her son's passing. She thinks she should have reminded him that there are much more important things out there than winning. What hurts her even more is the last thing she told Bryce. Instead of cheering him up or telling him that she would love him no matter what, she told him to take out the trash after getting home. She knows that this moment will always eat away at her soul. She will never be able to get over this. In this moment of sorrow, their minds are filled with fog. Suddenly, the two kiss each other, but Dave soon breaks away. He reasserts that he cannot do this. Later that night, the bishop finds Dave sitting in the church. After reflecting on the things that happened, he is visited by Clarice. She has a lot of things to say, so she wants him to just listen. During her speech, she underlines that her mother no longer has any say in their relationship, emphasizing that she has never learned how to be a caring partner. She expresses how much he loves him and how hard she wants to get him back. She is ready now to teach herself a different kind of partnership. Of course, Dave is more than ready to give this marriage another try. In this moment of full honesty and acceptance, another phase of their lives begins. In the next scene, Dave is cleaning the baseball pitch when Darnell comes up to him. Surprisingly enough, he asks him to take Darius back on the team. In a moment of total reconciliation, Dave accepts his offer wholeheartedly, and the rivals become friends. As Darnell leaves, Clarice comes by too, and tells her husband the words he always wanted to hear. She emphasizes that he will make a wonderful father one day. Suddenly, as if it weren't enough, she adds something else that brightens Dave's whole world. She says that it will happen in 7.5 months. Dave is so happy that he has to sit himself down. Life has been throwing him around throughout this story, but finally, he finds solid ground beneath his feet.